The early 1990s were wild. Arcade machines were still gobbling quarters like candy. Street Fighter ruled the earth, and Atari was trying to become relevant again. Enter the Atari Jaguar. Released in 1993, it promised 64 bits of power. 64 bits! That's 32 more than the Genesis and Super Nintendo combined. Take that, math! But as we all know, power doesn't mean much if the software can't back it up. So today, we're looking at 3 games that tried to bridge the arcade to home gap on the Jaguar, including Raiden, the popular top-down, forward-scrolling shoot-'em-up, the Slam Dunkathon NBA Jam Tournament Edition, and Total Carnage, the spiritual successor to the classic Smash TV. How close did these home versions get to their coin-op counterparts? Did the Jaguar deliver the elusive arcade-at-home experience, or just leave us wishing we saved our money back in the day? Let's find out. Before we dive into it, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is always here for a quick retro gaming break whenever you need it. I appreciate your support since it's the only way that YouTube will highlight my videos. Raiden was an arcade staple released in 1990. A vertically scrolling shooter with tight controls, booming explosions, and music that made you feel like you were piloting a $60 million death machine on a mission to destroy every tank, jet, and alien-looking ground installation in sight. So how does the Jaguar version stack up? Shockingly well. I mean, this port is damn near arcade perfect, but there are some differences. The screen format has an annoying panel taking up 1/3 of the screen on the right side, to make the playable area mirror the vertical format of the screen used in the arcade version. That aside, we're talking nearly sprite-for-sprite accuracy, smooth controls, detailed explosions, and none of that flickery nonsense you'd expect from a struggling home port. And the sheer number of sprites on screen at a time with practically zero slowdown is pretty impressive. But wait, you say? The bigger ships blink in purple when hit in the arcade version, but they blink in white and orange in the Jag version. Okay, whatever. But do you want to know what really makes this one shine? The sound. Yep, the Jaguar version just sounds great. The bold synth rock soundtrack, it's here in full force, and to my ears, the Jaguar music is a solid improvement over the arcade version. In terms of sound effects, every explosion and power-up chime sounds just as punchy as the arcade version. The Jaguar's audio hardware really got to stretch its wings on this one, and oh how it soared. It's the kind of audio fidelity that makes you forget you're not standing in a pizza place with sticky floors and a pocket full of tokens. Gameplay-wise, very solid, and difficult as hell. While the control is fine and the hit detection is fair, and power-ups let you spray out a wall of lead or hose down the enemies with a river of white-hot plasma energy, the difficulty in the Jaguar remains, shall we say, arcade honest. Translation, you'll still die. A lot. But hey, that's what Raiden's all about, and it's part of the fun and the challenge. Your personal story, back in 1994, I'd rush home from my university classes just to sneak in a playthrough of this game before going off to work. And I swear, I could complete the game with a standard allowance of credits and no cheat codes, and complete all stages in just over a half an hour flat. It was a great way to catch my breath and have some fun, sneaking in maybe the only 30 minutes I'd get during my entire day to do something that I enjoyed, between the long hours in class, working, and then studying late into each night. Some good memories for sure. So thanks Atari and Raiden. And for those who think this is just a 16-bit Jaguar game, give me a break. Pop in the Super Nintendo version, called Raiden Trad, but still a port of the same arcade game, and you'll immediately see the difference, and I'm sorry. The Super Nintendo music and sound effects are downright prehistoric sounding compared to the CD-quality audio on the Jaguar, with its mighty DSP chip, lovingly referred to as Jerry. The only criticism I can really make is that the Jag version came out almost 4 years later after the original arcade. And while it's a tremendous game, by the time it was released, it already felt like the experience had aged a bit, especially when other more visually spectacular 2D shooters started coming out on the Sega Saturn. So my final verdict on this one is that it's the gold standard example of the Jaguar doing something right. This game's not just good for the Jaguar, it's genuinely a great port, by far the best home version of Raiden from the era. If you're looking for authentic arcade action on Atari's 64-bit beast, this is the one. Our second comparison is about one of the rare sports games on the Jaguar. We're talking about NBA Jam, and not just the vanilla version on the Genesis, no siree. This is the Tournament Edition, chock full of additional play modes and features. Anyone who's played it knows this is a game so loud, so exaggerated, and so gloriously unrealistic and overly simple. It made every 12-year-old believe they could jump 15 feet in the air and dunk from the three-point line. The arcade version ran on Midway's custom hardware, pushing digitized sprites, flaming slam dunks, crowd noise, and announcer commentary that has been burned into all of our brains. So, what does NBA Jam look like on the Atari Jaguar? Honestly, it's got to be one of the best home versions out there, but it's not arcade perfect. Compared to the 16-bit ports on the Genesis and Super Nintendo, the Jaguar version looks and sounds like it walked right out of the arcade. The graphics are cleaner, player sprites are sharper, more colorful and detailed, and the animations are smoother. It just has that extra layer of polish that the 16-bit consoles couldn't quite deliver. However, the arcade version still wins up the Jaguar with a bit more detail and animation with the crowd in the background. Audio-wise, it's also a step up. While the iconic announcer samples aren't quite arcade perfect, they're noticeably clearer than the muddy, compressed voices from the Genesis version. The music and in-game sound effects retain much more of that original Midway punch. And gameplay-wise, it plays just like the original. The CPU AI cheats just the right amount. The flaming basketball is still here, and most importantly, so are all of the over-the-top dunks. It's every bit as chaotic and fun as you remember. This version was also one of the only games that supported the Jaguar's Team Tap adapter, allowing an arcade-perfect 4-player mode. And while 2-player mode is still good fun, this is NBA Jam after all. It's supposed to be a 4-player yelling match on your mom's couch. But even playing it one-on-one or in 2-player mode is still an absolute blast. No, I've got to admit, I was never that much of an NBA Jam fan myself. Nothing against this game, it just wasn't my taste. The gameplay seemed a bit too simplistic and repetitive. Maybe that's something that's true with many different sports titles, I guess. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game one bit. It's just a matter of preference, I suppose. All of this considered, my verdict is that NBA Jam Tournament Edition on the Jaguar is a standout port and nearly arcade quality. It's a clear step above the 16-bit versions in visuals, sound, and performance. And despite not being 100% arcade perfect, this one is a slam dunk material and deserves a place on the Jaguar's highlight reel. Real quick, if you enjoy this content, I've put a link in the description below of a playlist of all of my other videos that you might also enjoy, including loads of other Jaguar content. So check it out. If you've ever played Smash TV in the arcade, you already know what to expect from its spiritual sequel, Total Carnage. Same over-the-top twin-stick shooter mayhem, but this time you're dropped into a fictional war-torn dictatorship, fighting for freedom as Captain Carnage and Major Mayhem from the Doomsday Squad, armed to the teeth and tasked with saving hostages while absolutely annihilating everything else on screen. Explosions? Check. Mutants? Check. Tanks, zombie bosses, and some dude named General Akboob? For real? Double check. Damn, I miss the 90s. So what happens when all that glorious chaos comes home to the Atari Jaguar? Surprisingly, a lot of it made the trip. But what's special here is that this version was licensed from the longtime game publisher Midway and originally ported to the Jaguar by handmade software, but wasn't actually released until almost 10 years after Atari abandoned the console and 13 years after the arcade version. In fact, we're lucky to even have this Jaguar version at all, since the original project to bring it to the console was dropped before it was ever released. Fortunately for retro gaming enthusiasts, the brilliant folks over at Songbird Productions licensed the code from handmade software. And I want to be clear that while Songbird Productions did not actually make this game, they did take the final beta ROM and made some minor tweaks to it, all done without the actual source code, mind you. This was pure ROM hacking. Since they didn't have the source code, it took over 100 hours reverse engineering the ROM and developing these patches. Those changes helped make the game more suitable for publication and included removing the text from the title screen loop saying beta version, only allowing players to visit the options screen before the game starts, and disabling a cheat for skipping levels, which was previously always active. And if you're curious about this game, check out the link in the description below to Songbird Productions' site. This one comes complete with full packaging and manual in addition to the physical cartridge, and would be a great title to add to anyone's collection. Now, all of the background aside, the Jaguar port of Total Carnage is actually a very respectable effort. Most of the core game content is here: the levels, the enemy types, the power-ups, the cheesy voiceovers, and my personal favorite, the utterly ridiculous explosions. It's all present and accounted for. Sure, the graphics have been scaled down, but just a little bit, and some background detail is missing compared to the arcade's sharper, busier aesthetic. But when you step back, this still really looks and plays like Total Carnage. It's fast, it's loud, and it throws a ridiculous number of enemies at you like you're trying to stress test your reflexes and your sanity. The limitation? The controls. In the arcade, Total Carnage, like Smash TV, used twin joysticks, one for moving, one for shooting. It was elegant, fluid, and perfect for the chaos. But the Jaguar controller, well, one D-pad and 3 main buttons doesn't quite cut it. But I guess the same would be said about any home port, given the limits of console controllers before dual analog stick controllers became the norm. And this port worked around it. You can rotate your fire using the buttons on the controller's number pad, which really helps, but it's not quite as precise or satisfying. But Jaguar owners can also play it on the aftermarket 6-button Pro controller, which makes it a much easier gameplay experience. Audio-wise, it definitely holds up. The voice samples and screams of fallen soldiers are all here. And while the Jaguar version doesn't have any in-game music, which is a relic of the original port being cancelled in the 90s, trust me, there's nothing worth noting about the music in the arcade version anyway, at all. In fact, the unrelenting cacophony of the weapons blasting away and all of the explosions is all you're going to hear anyway, so in my mind, any comparison about music is a moot point. Now gameplay-wise, it's always a blast. If you grew up with Smash TV or just loved a fast-paced, over-the-top shoot-'em-up, there's fun to be had here. Especially if you can adjust to the Jaguar's control scheme. So my verdict is that despite a minor graphical downgrade and the standard controller holding it back from true greatness, this is a solid and underrated port. Total Carnage on the Jaguar doesn't just survive the trip from the arcade to the living room. It brings enough of the madness to still be worth your time. Boom. Mission accomplished. So looking back at these 3 arcade ports on the Jaguar, what have we learned? Well, the Atari Jaguar wasn't a total bust when it came to arcade ports. It had some real horsepower, at least on paper, and it managed to get decent versions of some beloved titles. Raiden holds up surprisingly well. NBA Jam brings the heat, and Total Carnage is chaotic arcade action fun, even if your thumbs take some punishment. But across all 3 games, the biggest hurdle wasn't the graphics, sound, or gameplay. It was the Jaguar's limited third-party support. If Atari had managed that crucial aspect better, you might be telling a very different story today. Instead, the Jaguar became a fascinating relic of a time when 64-bit sounded like a superpower, but in reality proved to be a little bit more complicated. But that's just what I think. What other Jaguar ports of arcade games should be on this list? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your views. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, then hit that like button, like it's a 1-credit continue. And if you're new here, I'd like to welcome you to the channel and invite you to subscribe for more feel-good retro gaming content. Alright my friends, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out, reminding you to keep your games old school. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!